Right, thank you everybody for just bearing with us there for a second. We'll pop the camera back on. Hello and welcome to the webinar. A few technical issues, it's always the way on a Friday morning, but we really thank you for coming and joining us today with an absolutely fantastic subject that I'm absolutely super excited to have a bit of a chat and also joined by one of the people who's been here at Taskforce for a very, very long time. So I'd like to introduce Matthew McGowan, or Matty as a lot of our customers know him. Matty, how long have you been here at Taskforce now?
Mate, I've been at Taskforce now for 10 years, so quite a long time. Been through the thick of it, and it's great. Great company, great people we work with, and also amazing clients we also work with as well.
So I know a lot of you have dealt with Matty. If you ever have a little issue with something that's come through on the reports, obviously Matty's the person that we go to here in the office too. So Matty's our Director of Operations. What that means is that he looks after all of our trades out on the road, and he also looks after a lot of the back end here in the office for us as well. So 10 years experience here at the business. He's been here for longer than most, other than the CEO and our accountant. So he's one of the original members here at Taskforce, and it's fantastic to have you joining us here today, mate, on this webinar.
Thanks, Ash. Pleasure to be here.
So we're going to actually go through a really, really hot topic at the moment, which is the rental minimum standard regulations. Now, we're not going to go through every minimum standard today. We've done a webinar on that a couple of months ago. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to watch that in full, and we'll send some links out to that, of course, afterwards as well. What we're going to do today is we're going to go through the updated standards. So there's a couple of ones that have been updated, and also ones that have been clarified as well, which is really, really good. Makes it a lot easier for us in the whole industry to understand and easier to explain to our owners as well. We're also going to cover off the 4 new energy efficient standards that are coming in from 2027. We're going to talk about each of those standards. So when each of those standards become active, because it is a little bit different for every single one. We're going to go through some exemptions for you. So when it doesn't need to be activated. And then we're also just going to spend a little bit of the time at the end just talking about a couple of little RMS myths, or what we call RMS, which is rental minimum standards, our myths, and show you a few of the tools of the trade that our teams use as well, and very quickly look at the risks, but also the benefits of having rental minimum standards. Now, you will have the ability to ask questions. There is a chat functionality here on GoToMeetings. So if you go up to the top right and open the chat bar, if you have any questions throughout, please pop them in there and we'll get to your questions at the end. Hopefully we'll be able to answer all of the questions you've got there live, but if we can't, we'll go away and get the answer for you and send that back to you so you've got that information. All right, Matty, let's get into it. So these are the regulations we're going to cover off today. So firstly, the updated ones, door locks. Now, this is an interesting one. It's actually not an updated regulation. The regulation hasn't changed, but it has been some really good clarification. So we're going to go through that. We're also going to talk about bathroom facilities. Matty's going to show us some of what we do in the encoded internal window coverings. And then we're going to cover off the 4 new regulations for cooling, ceiling insulation, draft proofing, and water heaters. What we hope is that by the end of this, you're not daunted by those regulations. Trust me, they're not massive. They might seem a lot bigger than they are, but we're going to go through that today. All right, now, let's kick it off, Matty, with the #1 question that we get here is door locks. Does my door lock actually meet the requirements? So we're going to spend a little bit of time on this. Now, this regulation has not changed, by the way, but Matty and the team here have actually been doing a lot of work to try and get some clarification through Consumer Affairs. We noticed quite a while ago there was something on their website which contradicted what was in the actual regulations. And if you remember, we have to do these checks based on what is in the regulations, but we also have to meet the requirements that Consumer Affairs is asking, because of course they've got that task force out there at the moment that's looking at properties and making sure they do or do not meet the requirements. So to keep it as simple as I can today, all external doors that go into the internal part of the premises have to have locks on them that meet this regulation. Now, what they put in the regulation is it has to have a functioning deadlock. There's a few cases that I'll go into exactly what a deadlock is in a moment, and the regulations and what they state the deadlock in, which is slightly different to maybe the way that anyone in the building industry would understand it. So cases, firstly, where it does not have to be fitted. So if this is a very rare one, right? If the positioning of the door does not allow for it, Matty, then that's something where we don't have to have it fitted. Now, it's going to be pretty tough to get that exemption through Consumer Affairs. We get asked all the time about screen doors.
Yes, always. Yeah.
So screen doors do not have to have a lock on them at all, in fact. and they don't have to have a deadlock on them. If they do, that's fantastic. As long as it's working correctly, that's absolutely fine. But if they're not the primary door, so if there's a main door that's in that same door frame, the screen door does not have to meet these regulations. Now, there are also some instances where a different type of lock is required under law. Sometimes this is in an apartment block that has specific fire regulations, and front doors to apartments in a multi-story apartment where there is a security door to get into the building also don't have to meet the full deadlock compliance. The only other exemption that we really see here, which doesn't come around very often, is if there's something under a Heritage Act that's protected that can't be changed because it needs the original style of lock on that particular door. Not something that generally gets rented out very often. All right, now, Matty, we've got a couple of examples up here on the screen. So the first one is probably the main one that we see very often, which is that style of lock with just a pin that you can push. Yeah. Now, this actually meets the regulations. In fact, both of the examples here do. Now, this one on the left that you can see, that's what we call a single cylinder latch, which means that it only has a key from the outside. So a cylinder is whether it's activated by a key or not. You can see the example on the right is what we call a double cylinder. So it has a key on the outside and the inside, but it also has the latch on the inside. Yep. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky from the regulations, okay? So stay with me for this. If a deadlock is actually described in our Act, which it is, it has a slightly different meaning. So if you go across to the Residential Tenancies Act, there's a bunch of definitions in there. And in those definitions, it actually states that in terms of the regulations, a deadlock is defined as a dead latch with at least one cylinder. So we just talked about cylinders there. Cylinder is where you put the key into it. So it has to have at least one of those, which was generally on the outside, and it has to be a latching mechanism. Now, there's no actual definition of what that is. So we're going to go into a little bit because Consumer Affairs have now clarified this on their website. So a dead latch. A dead latch is a type of security lock that automatically locks when you close the door. So I've got a couple of examples here. This is actually my place. So you can see in both of these examples, the lock has a latching mechanism on it. So when that latch is actually fixed to the closed position, when the door is open, you can still close the door. Now that's really, really important. So Matty, that's what our teams are out on the road looking for. Yep. They're making sure they flick that lock to make sure it works, and then that they can still close the door. Now that's what we mean by automatically locking when the door is closed. Yep. Okay. So what that does, it prevents kind of jimmying from outside, prevents credit card manipulation from being able to get in there. There's a lot more technical detail into that, the way that latch works, the springs and all this kind of stuff. Don't worry about that. If you're looking at a door, you're on the inside of the door and you flick that latch and you can close the door and it stays locked from the outside, that's what we're looking for in these regulations. That means it meets the door latch regulation. Now you can also have digital locks that actually fix, that do work with this. So this is slightly different to a deadbolt. Now, if you look in the photo on the right here, that shows a dead latch, which is the main lock on the bottom, which has the handle, and there's also a deadbolt above that. So in this particular example, in this photo, because the main locking system on the door has that dead latch functionality, you can turn that snip on the end of it, close the door, and it stays locked from the outside, it will pass. If it did not have that, say it was just a dummy handle, so it didn't have a lock system in it at all, and it only had that dead bolt at the top, you can't close that door when that bolt is actuated. Yeah. All right, so that means that it doesn't pass the regulations. All right, now I'm going to summarize this, and then in the next few, I'm going to get Matty to show us a few more examples. So just summarizing, what is a dead latch? It is an automatic locking function of a door lock, okay? So on the outside, you will activate it with a key. On the inside, you can activate it with a latch, which is a single cylinder, or a key, which is what you would call a double cylinder. Now, it could have either of those on the inside. Both of them are actually fine. Now, Consumer Affairs will actually clarify on their website too, that those particular locks that have only a key from the inside, they're not recommended. And we do agree with that here at Taskforce. Now, they do pass the regulations, but they are not recommended. The reason for that is because they're really difficult to get out of the property in a fire. Now, if you go and talk to your insurance company, they'll want the opposite. They say if someone comes in through the window, it's a lot harder for them to get something out the door if you've got that in place. And that's why we have deadbolts, especially for when you're not at the property. So you can lock it up when you're not at the property, but you don't really want to be using those deadbolts when you're in the property.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, let's move on from door locks. If you've got any other questions for that, please, again, put them in the chat. All right, Matty, bathroom facilities. This is where I move across to your expertise. So currently, under the regulations, we're looking at a shower head having a 3-star WELS rating. So WELS is a water efficiency and labeling standard. Correct. Now, Matty, that goes up to 4-star.
For 2027, Ash. Yeah, that's correct.
How do we measure that?
So currently, there's a couple of things to do. So some shower heads, not a lot, will already have the WELS rating sticker on them. So you are able to tell from the actual shower head itself. Now, a lot of them also don't. So the way we test that, so we are always going to be testing the water flow. So how we do that, we have a jug, which has got markings. It's usually a 2-litre jug. So our team will measure the flow rate of the shower for about 10 seconds. Now, once they've done that by 10 seconds, they can then multiply the amount of water by 6, which would give them the flow rate over 1 minute. So a 4-star WELS rating would be, you have to have less than 7.5 litres per minute and more than 6 litres per minute. So to do that over 10 seconds, the amount, it's less than 1.25 litres and more than 1 litre, that would pass the flow rate test. Whereas right now we're measuring 3-star ratings. Again, the same sort of test, but there's obviously a different number for the water flow. But the 3 stars for now, the 4-star will be coming into effect as of next year.
That's right. So in particular, it actually comes into effect and it's a rolling thing from the 1st of March. So as soon as you enter into a new lease agreement or you renew an existing lease agreement, that's when this regulation becomes required. So at that point, it will step up from a 3-star to a 4-star requirement. Now, Matty, on our current rental minimum standard checks, we're actually going to start putting this in over the next week.
Correct.
And you're actually going to be seeing us report on all these 2027 standards. So for this particular one, what are we saying on this one?
Yeah, so with that, so look, we are, we don't want it to be failing anything right now because obviously that regulation hasn't come into effect yet, but we are just going to notify you of the 2027 regulation. So we'll still have the bathroom facilities that meets compliance now, but we'll also have a separate section for 2027, which will just advise if it is meeting that 4-star WELS rating as well.
Correct. So to summarize that, so at the moment, if it meets the 3-star rating, we're going to mark it as green. It passes a report because it passes the report on the day that we've done the report.
Correct.
And if you scroll down to the 2027 section, we're going to tell you whether it does comply with the 4-star rating for when you have a new lease agreement from the 1st of March 2027.
Correct.
Okay. So a rudimentary test, but actually a really good one, and it helps us determine in the instance that we're there. We have to test the hot water anyway, so we're already running it. We're going to do the test at that same time to minimize, obviously, the use of water while we're there.
Exactly.
All right. Another one that came in recently, so not a new or updated one, but one that we're all now a little bit more familiar with, is corded internal window coverings. Now, Matty, we've got a couple of these examples of the little clips that you can get from Consumer Affairs, from the Victorian government, and of course we've got them here as well. So as of now, any blind cord that has a looped cord that hangs below 1.6 meters, so the bottom of it sits below 1.6 meters, has to have these anchors affixing it. So our team are now doing that. Is that
correct? Yeah, exactly right, Ash. So moving forward, so all of our teams will have these blind clips, so they will be installed for anything under that 1.6 meter threshold. Look, on the odd occasion, depending on the property, what's the wall, it may not be possible, but 95% of the time it will be. If it is impossible, we will let you know the next solution for that to get that sorted as well.
So a really good example of when we can't put it on is if that blind has a cord that hangs, or it could even be a curtain as well, that hangs over where a sliding door is. Okay, we can't affix it to a sliding door because that point moves. So what we're going to do in that case is we're just going to report that back to you, and we're going to get you to reach out to a curtain or a blind installer or technician and make sure that they can look at options for you to change it. Right? So that becomes a bit of a maintenance issue for you guys to look at and upgrade for that particular property. But where and when we can fix it, we will absolutely fix it. If the broken ones, we'll fix it. If it's missing them and we can put it in, we'll put it in as well.
Anything that we can is possible to fix on the day, we will ensure that that's completed.
Now, there are a few things that we look for with that loop. So there are a number of measurements that we have to take once it sits below that 1.6 meter threshold. It basically can't make a loop over a certain size. So our team will measure that. And if it doesn't meet that at the time, we can actually move the existing one down as well. So if it's a slightly too bigger, so it's put in too loose, and it forms too big a loop, we'll correct that and make it a little bit better for you while we're there as well.
Exactly.
Okay. Alrighty, now let's get on to the new regulations.
Cooling, I suppose this one actually, it is quite a simple one, I believe. In all living areas. So right now, a heater must be in a living area. From 2027, an energy efficient cooling system will need to be installed into the living area.
Yeah, so it's a pretty simple thing for our teams to check. Obviously, we're going in there at the moment and checking that there's a heater in that main living area or a heater outlet in that main living area and that it's working. We're now going to be checking that with cooling as well. Now, this one is actually a bit of a rollout of when it needs to be introduced. So from the 1st of March 2027, it has to be in the property whenever you enter into a new lease agreement or you do a lease renewal. But by the 1st of July 2030, every property that is rented, regardless of its rental status, must have this cooling system fitted into the main living area. Now, there are a couple of exemptions to this. So if anyone's deep dived into the regulation, it's quite an interesting one. The main exemption is if there is a pre-existing fixed cooler that is currently in good working order. So that might not be an energy efficient one, but you've got, say, a swampy or something that actually has an outlet in that main living area. That means that it's actually okay. So in that instance, we're not going to report whether it is energy efficient or not, but we're going to be reporting on is there that cooling system in that section, because that will mean that after the 1st of March 2027, you'll be okay and it will pass that regulation. The other little exemption is if you have to replace an existing unit under warranty. So if there's a non-energy efficient system in there currently that you have to replace under warranty, that's fine. You can do it like for like under the new regulations that are coming in. Of course, owners corporation, local laws, heritage, there's always exemptions for every single rental minimum standard for those as well. So if the owners corporation says, no, you can't put it in this building, then that's absolutely fine. So that might happen with some of the high-rise apartments, although I hope they actually have cooling in them by now. Very few that are built without it. Okay, ceiling insulation. Matty, how are we checking ceiling insulation?
Yeah, sure. So our team, when they're at a property, so for residential properties, they'll find a safe access point into the manhole to check the ceiling space, just to ensure that there is insulation currently installed there. Now, OH&S is a big thing for us, so we just need to ensure that that entry point into the ceiling is safe for our team. And if it is, they'll have their head in there, look around with the phone and a camera. They'll take photos of the whole, the ceiling, what they can from there, to ensure that there is insulation installed.
Yep. So as an occupational health and safety requirement for this, these particular trades, we're not having going into your ceiling space like we would with our more highly trained gas fitters, for example, who have actually done the working in roof spaces checks. So this particular one, again, this is only for new rental agreements or lease renewals from the 1st of March 2027. So to keep it really, really simple, if we can access the roof space and we can see that there is existing insulation in there of any type, it will pass this regulation and we'll say, yes, there is ceiling insulation. You know that nothing needs to be done. You can continue renting that property out. If we get up there and we find that there's no insulation or that it's potentially not installed correctly, so there's a whole area missing, say an electrician or something's been up there and they've moved a whole lot of it over to one side and they haven't moved it back, then we'll just put a note on there that it needs to be rearranged so that it's fitting that full ceiling space. And if there's none, then you're going to have to get an authorized installer in, and they'll have to install it to the R5 specifications, which is the current level that you need in any new buildings as well.
Correct.
Right. Now, that one's quite simple, but there are going to be a few times, and we've already come across this with our regular checks, where we can't get into that ceiling space. So apartments, etc., where there is no access into the ceiling space because it's small, that's not going to be an issue. It's not going to be required. But if, say, there was a manhole that's now in a position that we can't safely access, and we had a really good example of this, Matty, a few weeks ago, where they'd redone the bathroom and they'd actually put a shower screen directly under the manhole. So we can't now safely access that. That manhole would need to be moved, and then we can go back out and actually make sure that it has ceiling insulation in that area.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. All right, draft proofing. Now, again, a relatively simple one. This one the same as most of the others. any rental agreement that's brand new or a lease renewal from the 1st of March 2027 is now going to have draft proofing on all external windows and external doors. So Maddie, we're just getting our teams to check and photograph this, correct?
Exactly right, Ash. Yeah, so all external windows, doors, our team will go around ensuring that there's draft proofing already installed. Yeah.
Now there is one exception to the Windows side of this. So if we have what's called a non-vented gas appliance, so say you've got a gas cooktop which isn't vented out through a range hood or doesn't have a fan directly above it in that space, that area, we can't have the draft proofing on the windows in that specific area, because that becomes the area where they actually get the breeze in and out of that area. So that becomes the expelling area for that particular area. We can't have the draft proofing on that. So we are going to check that, and we'll let you know. But it's quite a simple thing to do, and we will talk about some incentives that are coming up over the next couple of years to help your owners with this. All right, water heaters.
Yes.
So the standard actually changes for what's required for water heaters from the 1st of March 2027. So this one's a little bit different. It's not based on the date or the lease agreement. It's actually based on when the current system reaches the end of its life. Right?
Exactly.
So you might have gas instantaneous hot water system. It's in there right now. It's working absolutely fine. That's not a problem. It passes the current regulations. What happens is that when that unit gets to the end of its life, so it no longer works or it's no longer working and functioning correctly, it will need to be replaced with an energy efficient water heater.
Exactly.
Now, the Victorian government have stated that what they define as an energy efficient water heater is electric, right? So they're looking at electric heat pumps or electric solar hot water systems. That's becoming the standard across the whole industry. That's what they're wanting you to replace these gas systems with. So Maddie, what are our teams going to look for, and how are they going to report this back to our
Yeah, sure. So so our team, they'll find the current hot water system. They'll take a photo of that. We will also include, if it's a gas or an electrical hot water unit, if accessible, we'll also include a photo of that compliance plate as well. But like Ash said, a great thing to remember is if it is a gas hot water system, you do not have to replace that. It'll only need to be replaced once it reaches that end of life cycle.
Now, really interesting, there's always some exemptions in each of these laws. The usual ones apply around heritage, etc. But there was a couple of ones that we noticed that we thought were worthwhile looking at. So if you're replacing a system under warranty or a manufacturer fault, so they're replacing it like for like, you can replace it with the gas system. That's not an issue. If it's reached its end of life, however, and it's not under warranty, that's when you do have to change it across to a new one. So just to define what that is. Centralized systems in apartment blocks, they don't have to meet this. They can have any system that works across that entire unit. And very rare, but you might find this in some of the country properties if you look after them, water heaters that are supplied by a liquid petroleum gas system. So the fuel for that, for heating it, is actually LPG tanks. Then those ones can remain as is. But again, it is a lot more efficient if your owners do want to replace them with an electric heat pump hot water system. And it can be done quite easily. All right. Okay, so that's all of the regulations that have been updated. We've gone through some of them in a bit of detail, so I hope that's given you a little bit more information. We wanted to really quickly just debunk one or two little myths that we get, a few questions that come in. Now, Maddie, you said we get a lot of questions on window locks and whether they need a key on them or just a latch. Now, they don't actually need a key from the inside. They can just be a latch. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
I believe so.
So that's correct. So window locks, they don't have to have a key from the inside. It can just be a latch or a snib. What they're wanting in that particular regulation is that when the window is in its closed position, it can't be opened from the outside. So any type of latch mechanism does do that. The irregular wind out windows as well, that actually meets that requirement, even if it doesn't have a particular latch or anything, because you can't open them from the outside. The deadlocks on doors we've gone through quite a lot. A lot of people always ask us questions about whether the dead bolt is actually meeting the regulations. Hopefully we've cleared that up for you earlier on what a dead latch is. And of course, we'll send these slides out to you, and you can always watch this back on YouTube as well. Now, a couple of tools of the trade, Maddie, before we wrap up today. So we've got here a moisture meter. This is something that our teams use to measure things like rising damp and also look for mold and mildew in the
Correct.
property.
Yeah. So while they're doing a mold checks, if there's any visible mold, there may not be any visible mold, but our team will always also try to use the moisture meter to detect any type of dampness, which could potentially lead to mold down the track.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we're looking for that. So these two little prongs here, you'll put into the substrate, and there's a couple of different ways that you use this, and they'll give us a reading on the moisture. Now, what we're looking for is most substrates. So what we mean by a substrate is the material that's on the wall. Most of them do hold some kind of moisture. So wood will hold a little bit more moisture than a drywall, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got a number that we know is regular for that kind of system, but what we're looking for is changes and variance across the wall. So for rising damp, for instance, we'll measure it at 3 levels across the wall. And if we can see that it's pretty normal in the midsection, a lower section, but it gets really bad as we go low, that means that there's damp being pulled up into that wall from the ground. And that's what can cause issues with mold and mildew. And of course, we're looking for damp as part of these regulations as well. Okay. The flow testing we kind of talked about before, told you a little bit about how we do the bucket and that. And of course, there's a fair bit of experience that our trades have in this. So we do regular training sessions with these. In fact, we've got a next session with our team coming up next Tuesday. And we also put them through a bunch of training out in the field as well to make sure that they understand these regulations and they know how to look at them correctly and report back what we need to be able to pass or fail those particular tests. All right. Now, a few of the risks and benefits. Now, most people know this, so I'm not going to go into the risks too much, but of course, there are financial risks if the property is advertised and it doesn't meet the minimum standards, both for your owner and potentially for your office as well. More often, though, it's the reputational damage that can be done by that. That's what you don't want. But the main thing is, the main risk is to your renters. So it's renter safety. These regulations have been brought in for specific reasons. It was very unfortunate. The corded window blinds, for instance, are brought in because a young boy actually lost his life here in Victoria when he was accidentally got caught in one of those that wasn't attached to the wall. Unfortunately, slipped off the little area that he was standing on and effectively hung himself, which is absolutely drastic. Like, that's awful. We don't want to see that happening to any young kids across Victoria anymore. And that's why the Victorian government have brought these kind of regulations in. They don't bring them in willy-nilly. They are brought in for reasons, even if maybe we don't understand them at the time, or your owners potentially don't understand them. Now, the benefits for your owners of doing this, it's really good for property upkeep. So it helps with maintenance. Make sure that there isn't potential issues down in the future. We just talked about how we measure for damp, right? If you have rising damp in there that's not got onto early, it can get a lot worse, and then the fix can be a lot more expensive later on rather than just putting in a barrier now to stop it getting any worse. You also attract and retain renters, right? So you're attracting a better renter if you've got things like air conditioning and property. We had a couple of days earlier this month that were 40, 45 degrees.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely sweltering. If you opened the door, walked outside, it was like walking into a fan-forced oven. It's pretty awful conditions. I really feel sorry for our trades that were working out on the roads for most days. But inside with an air conditioner, it's nice and cool. And it's really, really easy. Now, if you think you've got young children or something like that in the house that you're renting, you want to have a nice, cool space for them, especially on those really hot days, as well for our elderly. We want to look after them as well. So it's for those reasons that they've brought in these regulations. You might think, oh, we're down in Victoria, it's not that hot, we're not Queensland, we're not the Northern Territory. We still actually get hotter temperatures in the last couple of months is testament to that. We just don't get them as much on average. Exactly. Winter in Melbourne, I don't know why we live here, right? But of course, your asset value. So making sure that your property meets all of these and has things like cooling, etc. in, it's also going to improve the asset value that you have down the track. Now, we're just about to wrap up here, so we really thank you for sticking with us today. But we do get a few questions. So I just want to summarize very quickly the dates that these regulations come in, all right? So from the 1st of March 2027, at the start of a new lease or a lease renewal, rental homes must then include an energy efficient cooling in the living area, 4-star shower heads, and draft proofing on all external doors, windows, and wall vents. From the 1st of March 2027, at the start of a new lease, ceiling spaces without insulation must be upgraded to that R5 rating. From the 1st of March 2027, water heaters that reach the end of their life will then need to be replaced with an energy efficient unit. And the final one, by the 1st of July 2023, all properties, regardless of their leaf status, will then have to have the energy efficient electric cooling in that main living area. All right, again, if you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat. We will get to them in just a moment. But before we get to those, I just want to talk a little bit about the available support that's out there for your owners. Now, there are currently Victorian energy upgrade discounts available for cooling, shower heads, and draft proofing. So we will include a link what we send out the information at the end of this with the Victorian government website that has a little bit more information on that your owners can get. Now, they have also stated that they're expecting these VEU discounts to come in for ceiling insulation from January 2027. So you'll have to stay tuned for that one, but that should be in place by the time it has to be done. Yeah. There are also hot water system rebates, and in fact, this has been around for many years.
Quite a long time now,
In fact, we used to do a little bit of it here at Taskforce, but through the Solar Homes program, you can actually get hot water system rebates if you're changing over from gas to electricity. Those do still exist. And furthermore, if you check with your council, there may actually be further incentives for your particular council that they've put in, and the federal government do have some incentives available as well. So do the research. The owners can do the research. We'll send out some links to those as well. I'm not going to go through them today because they are a minefield in themselves, but there's a lot of different ways you can get credits, etc., back on upgrading all of these things that will then meet the rental minimum standards here in Victoria. All righty. So now let's see if anyone has any questions. You can send them through to us. I haven't got any in the chat at the moment, so that usually means that either the chat's not working. If that's the case, I do apologize, or we've covered most of the questions that you had here today. So because of that, we'll actually wrap up here, and we say thank you so much for joining us. Maddie, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you here and to put a face to the name that a lot of people actually know.
No, it's been great, Ash. It's been great sharing with you guys. If you have any questions, please send them through, and we'll be able to answer those very shortly as well.
No worries. So I am going to put a little QR code up on the screen now. You can send us any questions through this QR code, and we'll get back to you one-on-one and give you an answer. We'll give you a quick call and have a chat about it if you like. You can also use this QR code if you'd like us to come out to your office and do a personalized one-on-one training session for your team. So there's absolutely no cost for that. It's a service that we provide to all of our customers here. Might even drag Maddie out of the office and have a bit of a chat with you. Or Shannon, who joined us for the last gas safety one, we can get him out to talk to your teams as well. And I'd love to come out and talk to you about rental minimum standards. It's something that I geek out on. I think it's a really interesting part of what we're required to do here in Victoria. And I do see that there are actually a lot of benefits to your owners if they meet these regulations. So with that said, we're going to wrap up for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Maddie, again, thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you for our next webinar, which we'll announce very shortly and send out to you, which will be in early March.
Thanks, everyone.